Even by 1998, when the Game Boy Color released, the Game Boy was definitely showing its age. I mean, it had come out all the way back in 1989. Yes, 9 years. That is damn impressive for a console's lifespan. But they needed to freshen things up. Yes, we have the Game Boy Pocket, and Japan had the Game Boy Light, but it was still the same old gray brick. So, Nintendo unveiled the Game Boy Color, and people were hyped for the breath of fresh air. But according to Nintendo, the Game Boy Color was not a new generational advancement. No, instead it is considered by them to be another iteration of the classic. Playing devil's advocate here, I mean, yeah, from a distance, that's all it really was. It was a Game Boy that could just play games in color. And not just new games, we'll get to that, but all the old Game Boy games were actually playable in a myriad of custom color schemes. You were able to choose these on console startup by messing with the buttons. This was something people only thought possible on the Super Game Boy for the Super Nintendo, but here it was. So, was that really it? Well, with a little more optimism in my step, it actually was a bit of a more advanced system. Not only was it backwards compatible with every Game Boy game released up to this point, but it had its own library of games, exclusive titles that, while only slightly, did show an improvement in graphics, mainly having a much bigger color palette than normal Game Boy games. So while Nintendo tries to brush this off saying, oh, it's just the Game Boy, it's nothing special, it's nothing new, it very much was something new. It was, at least as a kid, this thing was great. I mean, it could play freaking new games, it had freaking color graphics. This thing was awesome to play with back in the day. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's focus on the main question. And that is, was the Game Boy Color innovative? God, no.